Hello, this is Suzanne in Ohio. Well, I want to take you on the next step of my journey here for the Journal of Stitchery. I'm getting ready to think of a composition to use my little bird on a title page. And I thought you just might like to come along with me here this morning and see what happens during this process. This might not be very exciting, but then again, it might be for some people. So I've got you down pretty close here. I'm going to try to stay in frame. And here is my concept. The original bird was painted on this piece of real thin sheeting or muslin or or lining, whatever it was. And I reshaped him and stitched right over him to turn him into a Baltimore oil. Now, what to do with him? Well, here was my original thought. You know how things go. I don't know if I'll stick with it or not. But what I thought about was, let me change this setting here a little bit. Back you out. Sometimes it won't respond. Okay, so if I place my bird here, my thought was to put a wreath with a lot of stitches, flowers, berries, and things like that on it. That would give me the option or the opportunity to practice some flowers and different types of stitches, especially the couching, because I thought I would use big and small fibers, some yarn, some embroidery floss, some other strange things that I have, and just create a wreath. And then add flowers and berries and catkins and whatever I need to it. Plus, if I place him where he's sitting in the wreath, he'll be covered up with fibers and types of things here, maybe even a cluster of flowers, and I don't have to worry about giving him feet. So that's how my concept is going. Now, I saw this wreath on one of the other participants. I saw it on the Facebook page, and I asked her permission to use her idea. It was just too perfect. And she said, of course. And I'm sorry, I cannot remember her name exactly. And I went back, and she's too far back in the feed for me to find it, at least last night. Now, what to do with this space down here? I had an idea that I would like to print off an old postcard, and I have a lot of files in my computer, and I have, the capability of sending that fabric through my printer. If I print it like an old postcard, then I can mount it on here, and I can write Suzanne's Journal of Stitchery and the date and blah, blah, blah on there. So that's my idea so far. Okay, so the first thing I would do is ask myself, how am I going to put him on a background? My first thought was, when I take this stitching off, I would use this leaf print as a background, and I could. So bear with me here while I just snip this off of here, and it's just basted on I first thought this was going to be my page, but then the more I thought, nothing shows up on that. It's so light. I would have to use all very dark colors, blah, blah, blah. So let's just take that loose. And then let's get him out of this frame. I'll untwist it here if I can get it off. I had it on there very tight. Here's just a little comment on frames. This is not the perfect frame for this type of embroidery. As I told you, this was the long and the short stitch. And it needs to be, anytime you're working on something, it needs to be super tight. But these frames that have the little lip along the side, they're the ones that hold your fabric in there much tighter than normally. I've also done things like put thin pieces of gripper just in two places to hold it down. And there is a right and wrong way of putting this on. It says this side up. So what it wants you to do is lay down the part that has, I wonder if I can get this to respond now. There it goes. The part with the screw on it, the tightening element, it wants you to lay that down first, stretch your fabric over it, and it wants you to push this down on the inside of that. It even has the words embossed here in the plastic, this side up, and that will hold your fabric pretty darn tight. So what happens though is it pushes it to the back. And I don't like working on the inside of my hoop. So I did it just the opposite, and it still worked just fine. Okay, so what do I do with this bird? Well, my first idea was just to take my scissors and cut the white fabric away and leave him on the background. And I could, but then I started thinking this morning, what do I have that could be a little bit better? So I've got some things out here. Let me just cut this away. Must have put a knot in there, which I know better. Okay, so I can cut him away just from that, and he'll be sitting on this background. And then for any other embroidery that I want to put on this background, I would put a backing piece underneath it for stability, either a thin piece of fabric or some of that stabilizer. Then my brain started thinking, I thought, oh, I have this, which I've already used, but you can hardly see it on the bunny page. So I could repeat that. And what I liked about it was it has the blue and it has the green and then just a smidge of an orange color down here. Probably wouldn't even be able to see that in the end. But if I use this piece, then he would automatically be sitting on something that would replicate the sky and greenery. So I really do believe that's what I'm going to do. So I got out one of my blank pages for my book, and I'm just going to snip this and tear it so that I have the correct size. So bear with me while I do that. I'll just put two little snips for starters here, and if this part don't rip off, I'll cut it with pinking shears. But let's see what happens here. I might not have enough to get a hold of. That was a commercial piece of fabric. Okay. Something's helping me today. So, just tear this. Don't want to go any further than that. I'll snip this off. And then let's measure the other way. Now, if you have an aversion to raw edges, you could always mark it and cut it with pinking shears or your rotary cutter or whatever. I love raw edges. So, all right, so there I have the background piece. What I'm going to do is put this white under here because, pardon me, the color will show up a little bit better. Now, I debated whether or not to try to cut him out on camera because I've got to be extremely careful, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. if you want to watch with me. And then we'll show you how we're going to place him around. Oh, here's something I wanted to show you first. I wanted to show you, for anybody that doesn't know what the iron away pen is. Now, when I first learned about these pens, I thought they were produced for the quilting or crafting or sewing community, but really they are nothing but a normal pen sold in the stationery department. And it's Frixion or Frixon, however you want to pronounce it. And they come in 5 different colors: purple, red, blue, and I even ordered some white ones online, blah, blah, blah. But it says erasable. That means you can erase it with eraser on paper. And I believe it's the friction of the eraser that causes it to disappear. But it's wonderful because it disappears on fabric. And I do have some of my red lines showing on the outside of this Oreo, and you probably can barely see it. So I just want to show you what happens when you apply an iron to it. Now, I'm not on an ironing surface. I'm just on my cutting mat, but it takes so little heat to do it that I can do it real quick, and I have a small iron heated up here. So I'm just going to touch it, and look at that, away it goes. And I've got some sticking out his tail and on the top of his head. And you probably hear the steam in there going, but I didn't mean to have that on. You don't have to have that. What did I drop on the floor? Okay, so that shows you about that pen. That's one thing I want to do. Because I save all my little scraps, I'll just take everything. I'm going to back out here a little bit and see, so you can see more of what I'm doing then when we get up close. So I save all my scraps for everything. So I'll just rip these off nice and they'll be ready for another project. Besides that, it gets a lot of it out of my way because I might be too close there. I might tear that into his beak. So, yeah, I'm glad I saw that. And take this excess off here. So let's try cutting him out. Now, if any of you do long and short stitch and you're really experienced embroiderers, you'll see how many mistakes I have here in this bird. But for the most part, he looks great to me for what I'm doing, so I'm going to tell myself I'm real happy with him. And it's the colors that make him, so let me get the correct glasses on here. And I have a real sharp pair of scissors here. These little gingers are just amazing. Let's see how they do cutting through 2 layers. And I have to watch very careful that I don't shave off even the tiniest piece of one of my stitches. And if I can see a tiny little outline around him, I don't care. I kind of like that, like when I'm fussy cutting, let's come up here. When I'm fussy cutting like things out for junk journals, I like that little white edge. And I don't want to run the risk. I put so much work into this bird. Told my sister I won't be doing this kind of a stitch or this kind of an image anyway soon. Now, I've already made up my mind. If anything happens and I do cut a little piece, cut into my stitches anywhere, I will put a leaf somewhere to cover up the edge. So that's not smart. When you use your shears like this, even though it's easier to close them, then you have the rest of the blade that could cut into another part of your design. So it's better when it's super important, just use the tips. Now I can see there's a yellow stitch coming down further than I really would have wanted it. So I'm going to steer clear of that. Round that corner off just a little. Talking about using the whole blade of your scissors or shears or whatever you call them. I do cosmetology. I do hair. One of my customers was a home ec teacher for years, and she told me how the students spend all this time setting in a sleeve, and then in basic sewing you go back and you clip the curves. Well, she didn't use the tip of her shears, and she cut right into her sleeve that she had spent so much time setting in. And for a junior high person, back in the day when there was home ec, it took a long time. All right, oh my gosh, I guess I've been holding my breath. So there he is cut out. Now let's see what he might look like on this background. Okay, now I might have the color tones faded out a little bit just to get some brightness today, because I couldn't get my lighting quite right, but there's a sufficient blue and green and touches of this light orange down here. So I'm happy with this. So let's back out again and okay. Now let's imagine that he's going to sit somewhere here, and because I can erase this if I don't like it, I can go ahead and simulate my wreath on here. I would like to have something with a perfect circle just to start with, even though it's not going to stay a perfect circle. I don't know if I have anything sitting around here. I'm in cramped quarters. Well, I might have to erase it and start over, but let's just say. Now I'm just going to be cognizant of staying sort of the same distance from the edges, because I want to put greenery and stuff, sticky outies I call them, on this wreath, so I don't want to get it too close to the edge. And I don't want it to look too small for this bird or too big. So if I pretend like his feet are right there, then I can position him right here, and I believe he would be just grand. So that's probably what I'll do, and I still have plenty of room down here for my so-called postcard look. And if his tail comes down and hangs on top of the postcard, all the better. All right, so if I do that, the first thing I would do is make sure I'm happy with the look of this circle. And then I've done some wreaths before in embroidery, and I just did this kind of undulating line. I'm going to turn one of my lamps off here just to see if it makes this better. It says I can find the flip button on it. Maybe you can see the red line a little bit better now. Not sure. Oh, I'm slow this morning with everything. Okay, so this wibbly wobbly line, and then I'll choose the one that kind of looks good to my brain, and I'll do one major go around first. Now I might switch out my fabrics and or fibers and color so that it doesn't look too contrived, but something like that, and then that's what I would start with. And as I go around and round and put pieces in there, I'll make sure the proper ones go underneath, or over or whatever to look like it's all woven together like a grapevine wreath. But before I start on that, I want my flowers in first because I can always weave the branches underneath. But if I have a whole bunch of thick fibers on here and then try to put flowers on top of them, I'm not sure I would like that. But I will just place my flowers. Oh, I don't even have a type of flower in mind, but um, let's say I've got a center there. And something like that. And see if I can get you a better look at that. When it's on autofocus, it sometimes doesn't want to do it. Let me put the pin up here. Come on, camera. It's not going to do it. And I'm technologically challenged. So if I have my vines, my flowers, my greenery, my little sticky outies everywhere I want him, then I will place a bird on top of that. Now, because this will have a lot of depth to it, I might have to pad him underneath a little bit just to make him look good. And I don't mind doing that. So that is my ideas and my start for that. Now, what can I use for part of my greenery in this wreath? Well, I pulled out some things here this morning that had color tones that match, so I just want to show you what I've got to choose from and possibly what I could use smidgens of. I like raggy looking textiles. I have a piece of orange lace that now all that I'm going to show you here I dyed one way or another, either with polymer dip bath or with alcohol inks. Here was a concept I had earlier to put him on a blue background and then put the wreath on top of that. And I realized that's just too busy. It's not my style typically. So, what are our styles? I don't know. I call myself whimsical, verging on realistic sometimes. But you have to use your stretch of imagination for that. This is a polymer dyed. This one had this little scrap, so that picks up on the yellow. And then I had this piece of gold, and I do have more gold. And very faintly, it kind of implies gold in his tail. So that could be a possibility. I have bright green, spring green. And that's the question of when I start putting the greenery in here. And I believe it should be brighter spring greens with just a few dark to give it some, contrast. So I have that. And those are polymer dyed, all polymer dyed laces. Now this stuff is what I dyed with alcohol inks. And this is an old tablecloth. And I absolutely love, 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 love working with this stuff. And let me show you how it could work into this. So let me pick a place where I'm not wasting too much. Okay, this is going to be really too big, but you'll get the idea of what I would do. Now this tablecloth came to me and it was already partially rotten, and I loved it because I can just rip it. So I can just put my thumb in here and just pull, and then my goal is to tear out this piece that looks like a leaf. And I got it almost out. And for anything else, because I've already got some raggy, I can go ahead and snip off some with the scissors. And that way I'm not getting rid of all my strings. I love my strings. So now what I might do is take my alcohol ink and darken the outside edges of this with a paintbrush, even though the whole thing has already been dyed with alcohol ink. So I could place this in the wreath, and again I say it's too big, but you get the idea. I had a tiny little piece, and I don't really have on this piece. I have bags of this stuff, so I know I could find the right thing. But these old tablecloths had all kind of different things woven into the design, and I've used them on so many things. And I have stained them every color you can imagine. If you've never worked with alcohol inks on fabric, you're missing something, because they do the most amazing things. And there's a little dark greenish blue flower, so you can see how that could work out. But the goal for this journal is the stitchery, so I'm for sure going to do some flowers in embroidery and try to do some different things, and even some leaves using that fishbone stitch, which I have not practiced enough yet. So you get the idea of what could happen. I'll be back with the next phase of it, where I'll have the wreath probably done, and I'll show you what my postcard looks like after I run it off on the printer. And there you have it. That'll be my title page for Roxy's Journal of Stitchery. And boy, am I enjoying this. It has forced me to learn. Okay, one more thing I wanted to show you was this thread magic. Now, pulling all this thread through here, I was first using a little bit of beeswax. I carry, that's in my sewing box. But I forgot to bring this here with me. What I had was in storage, so I ordered some real quick on Amazon. And this Thread Magic, it's called Thread Conditioner. It is the most amazing thing, much better than beeswax. Now, I don't know what this is made out of. I would guess some kind of silicone, but it's used by all kinds of thread artists, so it has to be okay. And these little notches are on the side here so that you can drag your thread through it. And just a little bit works, because after you drag your thread through again and again, it distributes it throughout the whole thing. So there you go. Thread Magic on Amazon if you want to get yourself some. It really helps prevent knots and tangles, and even if you get a knot or a tangle, you can get it out much easier. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you're stitching along on that journal. I keep saying challenge, but it's not really. But create yourself a beautiful piece and make it an heirloom, or just a record of your journey as you learn to stitch. All right, guys, I'll be back soon with the next phase of the title page. Thanks for watching.